The Eternal King. The Tragedy of Osiris. Imagine being invited to the most lavish banquet of your life. The air is thick with the scent of blue lotus and roasted meats. The wine is flowing like the Nile during the flood, and the music of the harps is so hypnotic it feels like a dream. Your own brother, your own blood, presents a gift so beautiful it steals your breath. A golden chest, carved from the rarest cedar of Lebanon, inlaid with lapis lazuli, turquoise, and the very stars of the heavens. He asks you to step inside, just for a game, just to see if the gods shape this wood for you alone. But the moment you lie down, the laughter stops, the music dies. The heavy lid slams shut with a sound that echoes like a thunderclap in a tomb. The iron nails are driven deep into the wood, clang, 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 and then the boiling molten lead is poured over every seam, sealing your lungs in a golden cage of darkness. This isn't just a murder. This is the birth of the afterlife. This is the story of Osiris, the king who was butchered into 14 pieces, the wife who refused to let him vanish, and the betrayal that defined the soul of Egypt forever. You are watching Gods and Gladiators. Subscribe now, or be forgotten by the sands of time. Before the pyramids challenged the sun, before the first stone was laid for the great temples of Luxor, Egypt was a nightmare. It was not a nation, it was a battlefield of shadows. Imagine a land where the Nile was not a gift, but a cruel, unpredictable graveyard. Humanity did not live, they survived in the dirt. They were shadows moving through the papyrus reeds, driven by the primal, starving hunger of beasts. They knew no law, they knew no harvest. They lived in a cycle of primal violence where the only rule was the survival of the strongest. Their existence was dictated by the heat of the sun and the darkness of ignorance. They ate raw flesh and drank from the muddy banks, unaware that beneath their feet lay the richest soil in the world. Then, from the lineage of the gods themselves, a figure emerged who would rewrite the destiny of the earth forever. Osiris. He did not descend with a sword to conquer or a whip to enslave. He came with a seed to sow. He was the first great teacher of history. Legend tells us that it was he who took the trembling, blood-stained hands of men and taught them to reach into the fertile black silt left behind by the flooding of the Nile. "Look," he whispered to the starving masses. "This is not dirt. This is the essence of life itself." Osiris revealed the secrets of the grain. He showed them how to domesticate wheat and barley, how to wait for the river to rise and fall, and how to store the sun's energy in the form of bread. Under his guidance, men stopped hunting in the shadows and became architects of the land. But his gift was not just bread for the belly. Osiris knew that while the body needs food, the soul requires order. He established the first laws. He was the architect of justice, teaching that the spoken word held more power than the physical blow. He built the first temples, instructing humanity in the respect of the divine, and gave them music, the flute and the lyre, so the human heart could express what words could not reach. Under his reign, Egypt flourished like a garden in the desert. Where there was once only sand and blood, there were now irrigation canals and golden cities. Peace was no longer a distant dream, it was a daily reality. Osiris became the symbol of civilization itself, the Lord of Goodness. At his side was the great Isis, his wife, his sister, and the most powerful sorceress in the cosmos. Her wisdom and magic provided the balance necessary to keep the world perfect. But in the universe of gods and gladiators, light never travels alone. While Osiris taught humanity how to live, in the shadows of the red dunes, a pair of eyes clouded by envy watched every triumph. The perfection of Osiris's kingdom was a personal insult to his brother, Set. Set was the lord of the red lands. He was the god of the barren, scorching sands where nothing grows and only the ruthless survive. To Set, the prosperity of Egypt was a sickness. He watched from the burning dunes as his brother was worshipped. He heard his brother's name sung in every home, and he saw his brother's shadow stretching over a kingdom that Set believed should have been his own. The envy of a god is not like the envy of a man. It is a poison that consumes the soul until only malice remains. Set did not just want the throne. He wanted to erase everything Osiris had built. He despised the order, the laws, and the blooming fields. He craved the return of the wild, the chaotic, and the primal. Every smile Osiris shared with Isis, every new city founded, every harvest gathered was a dagger in Set's pride. But Set was no fool. He knew he could not defeat Osiris in an open, fair fight. for the people and the gods stood behind the King of Light. To bring down a god of order, he needed something more potent than strength. He needed a plan. He began to study his brother with the precision of a predator. He looked for the one thing that even a perfect king possesses, a sense of wonder, a love for beauty, and a fatal trust in his own blood. In the dark corners of the desert, Set began to gather his allies, 2 conspirators who, like him, felt overshadowed by the brilliance of the sun. Together, they whispered in the dark, weaving a web of shadows around the golden throne. Set didn't just want to kill Osiris. He wanted to trap him in his own greatness. He commissioned a work of art that was also a masterpiece of horror. A chest made of the rarest woods, encrusted with jewels that mimicked the stars, but built with a singular terrifying purpose. It was measured to the exact dimensions of his brother's body. A golden cage disguised as a royal gift. The trap was set. The god of chaos had finished his preparations, and now he only needed a reason to bring his brother to the table. The invitation was sent. The feast was ready, and the world had no idea that the Age of Light was about to be swallowed by an eclipse of blood. The palace halls breathed with the scent of lotus and roasted meats. It was a night of celebration, or so it seemed. Set, wearing a smile that masked 1,000 daggers, had invited his brother Osiris to a grand banquet. The 72 conspirators sat at the tables, their eyes darting between the King of Light and the shadows. They toasted to Egypt, but their cups were filled with the bitter wine of conspiracy. Osiris, the noble king, entered without a guard. His heart was open, and his trust was absolute. He saw a brother offering peace, not a predator laying a trap. The laughter was loud, the music was hypnotic, but the air was thick with the electricity of an impending storm. At the height of the feast, Set stood up and signaled his servants to bring forth the chest. The room went silent. It was a masterpiece of horror, disguised as art. The guests gasped in feigned wonder. Set announced with a playful glint in his eyes, "Whoever fits perfectly within this chest shall have it as a gift, a token of my admiration." One by one, the conspirators tried to lie inside. Some were too tall, others too short. They laughed, turning the grim ritual into a game. Finally, Set turned to his brother. "Will you not try, my king? Perhaps the gods shaped this wood for you alone." Osiris, amused and captivated by the beauty of the gift, stepped forward. The room went deathly silent as he laid down inside the golden box. It was a perfect fit. In that moment of alignment, the trap snapped. Before Osiris could breathe, the conspirators rushed forward. They slammed the heavy lid. Hammers struck nails into the wood, sealing the King of Life in a darkness he had never known. They poured molten lead over the edges, ensuring no prayer could reach him. The banquet of joy had become a funeral rite. With a roar of triumph, Set ordered the chest to be cast into the Nile. The king, who taught the world how to live, was now a prisoner of the river, carried away by the current. The light of Egypt had been extinguished, and the reign of chaos had begun. The Nile, the very lifeblood of Egypt that Osiris had taught his people to cherish, had now become his tomb. The golden chest drifted down the river's winding curves, carried by a current that seemed to mourn its heavy burden. As the palace celebration turned into a silent crime scene, the world itself felt the shift. The sun seemed to lose its luster, and the fields that once thrived under the king's gaze began to wilt, as if the earth knew its master was gone. The chest traveled far beyond the borders of the kingdom, passing through the papyrus thickets and the great green sea, until it reached the distant shores of Byblos. There, the waves pushed the divine coffin into the branches of a young tamarisk tree. In a final act of nature's devotion, the tree grew with supernatural speed, wrapping its trunk around the golden chest, hiding the god within its bark. Osiris had not just died, he had been swallowed by the world he once ruled. He had vanished into the wood and the water, leaving behind a void that no mortal king could ever fill. Back in Egypt, the silence was broken by the roar of a usurper. Set did not waste time mourning. He stepped onto the throne with the dust of the desert on his sandals and the fire of chaos in his eyes. He declared himself the new sun, the new law, and the new god. He tore down the symbols of his brother's reign, replacing the order of the harvest with the law of the storm. The golden age of Osiris was being erased, buried under the shifting sands of a new, cruel reality. To the people, it was as if the gods themselves had abandoned them. There were no more songs in the fields, only the sound of Set's soldiers and the cries of those who remembered the Lord of Goodness. But while Set celebrated his victory, believing the river had finished his work, he forgot one thing. He forgot that even when a god disappears, his shadow remains. And in the heart of the palace, one woman refused to let that shadow fade. Isis, the great mother and queen of magic, refused to accept that the light of her life could be extinguished. She did not wear the crown of a grieving widow. She wore the tattered robes of a seeker. She cut her hair. She dressed in mourning. And she set out on a journey that would take her to the very edge of the known world. Isis walked the banks of the Nile, her feet bleeding on the sharp stones, her eyes searching every reed and every shadow. She spoke to the children, for she knew that those with pure hearts could see what the wise had forgotten. She followed the whispers of the water, a goddess reduced to a wanderer driven by a love that defied the laws of mortality. Her journey led her across the sea to Byblos. There she found a scent that she knew better than her own breath, the scent of Osiris trapped within the heart of the tamarisk tree. The tree had grown with such supernatural beauty that the king of Byblos had cut it down to serve as a central pillar for his palace, unknowingly enshrining a god within his walls. Isis did not storm the gates with thunder. She entered the palace as a humble servant, a nursemaid with a scent of heaven that enchanted everyone she touched. She waited, she observed, and through her secret arts, she eventually revealed her true divine nature. In exchange for her blessings, she made one desperate request, the pillar of the palace. When the wood was finally split open, the world seemed to hold its breath. There, inside the hollow trunk, lay the golden chest. Isis fell upon it, her cries of grief and relief shaking the foundations of the hall. She had found him. She had crossed the sea and defied the silence of the gods to reclaim her husband. But as she began the long journey back to Egypt, hiding the chest in the secret marshes of the delta, she knew her task was only beginning. She had found his body, but the spark of life was still a prisoner of the shadow world. The marshes of the Nile Delta are a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. It was here, hidden under the pale light of the moon, that Isis believed she had finally found a sanctuary. But the eye of chaos never sleeps. Set, hunting by the light of the full moon, stumbled upon the golden chest hidden in the tall grass. When he saw the peaceful face of his brother, still majestic even in the stillness of death, a volcanic rage exploded within him. Set did not just want Osiris dead. He wanted him erased from the fabric of existence. In an act of brutality that would stain the history of the gods forever, Set drew his sword. He did not strike once but 14 times. He tore the body of Osiris apart, limb from limb, bone from bone. He transformed a god into a collection of bleeding remnants. With a roar that shook the stars, he scattered the 14 pieces across the entire length of Egypt. One was thrown into the deep waters of the Nile. Others were buried in the scorching sands of the Red Desert. "Let the queen search now," Set screamed into the night. "Let the world see that there is no order, only the fragments of a broken dream." The crime was absolute. The king who taught humanity how to live had been reduced to scattered seeds in a wasteland of hate. Set believed he had won, but he underestimated the power of a heart that refuses to forget. Isis, accompanied by her sister Nephthys and the jackal-headed god Anubis, began a pilgrimage that would define the very essence of faith. They tracked the divine. From the sun-drenched dunes of the south to the humid marshes of the north, they gathered the 14 fragments. Every piece found was washed in the tears of a goddess and wrapped in the finest white linen. One piece was missing, consumed by the fish of the Nile. But for Isis, perfection was not found in the flesh, but in the ritual. Under the shadow of the ancient stars, the first mummification in history began. Anubis, the lord of the secret land, took the lead. This was not merely a burial, it was an act of reconstruction. They used resins from distant lands, oils that smelled of eternity, and spells that had never been whispered before. They were creating a bridge between the physical and the spiritual. Isis breathed her own life into the cold wrappings. She fanned the air with her great wings, reciting the words of power that could command even the shadows of the Duat. The ritual was a message to the universe. Order cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed. The chamber was cold, filled with the heavy scent of myrrh. Isis stood over the silent form of Osiris. She transformed herself into a kite, a bird of prey. She began to beat her wings over the body, creating a divine wind, the breath of life. Each stroke of her wings was a rhythmic incantation. The air in the room began to glow with a golden hue. And then it happened. In a moment that defied every law of nature, the lungs of the broken god expanded. Osiris opened his eyes. It was not a return to his former life, but a transition to something far more profound. In that fleeting, miraculous window between worlds, the divine spark was reignited. This was the resurrection that promised every soul that death was not a wall, but a doorway. During this brief reunion, a final miracle occurred, the conception of Horus. In the midst of death, life found a way to bridge the generations. Isis had not only brought back her king, she had secured the future of the throne. But the light of the living world was no longer the place for Osiris. As his spirit fully awakened, he realized his destiny had shifted. He was no longer a king of the sun, but a sovereign of the stars and the shadows.
Osiris descended into the Duat, not as a prisoner, but as its undisputed king.
In the Hall of the Two Truths, he took his seat upon a throne of lapis lazuli. He became the great judge, the one who would weigh the hearts of men against the feather of Maat. His presence turned the darkness of the afterlife into a place of hope and justice. To look upon the face of Osiris was to see the promise that no good deed is forgotten and no suffering is in vain. He became the Lord of the dead, but in doing so, he became the most important god for the living. Every Egyptian lived their life with their eyes fixed on the horizon of Osiris, seeking his approval to enter the field of reeds, the eternal paradise. The king who taught humanity how to live had now become the god who taught humanity how to die. But while Osiris established his throne in the underworld, the world of the living was still screaming for justice. From the union of the dead king and the queen of magic, Horus was born. Hidden in the deep marshes to escape Set's wrath, Horus grew in strength and duty. He was the avenger of his father. The long, bloody conflict between the desert storm and the celestial Falcon would eventually reach the great Ennead of the gods. The trial was long and the battles were fierce, but the verdict of the universe was clear. Set the usurper was cast down, and Horus was crowned the rightful king of Egypt. The order that Osiris had once taught was restored, but with a new, indestructible layer of protection. Every pharaoh who would ever sit on the throne would do so as the living Horus, a direct link to the legacy of the god who had died to save his people. The story of Osiris is the story of the cycle of existence. It is the flooding of the river that brings life, the setting of the sun that promises a new dawn, and the love of a family that defies the gravity of the grave. He remains the Lord of eternity, the green god of rebirth, and the silent judge who watches over the destiny of all. His name is written in the stars and carved into the very stone of Egypt. The king who taught us how to live and the God who showed us how to transcend remains with us, a promise of life that never ends. Osiris died as a king, but he rose as the heartbeat of a civilization. What part of this ancient betrayal shocked you the most? Was it the golden chest or the 14 scattered pieces? Tell us in the comments below. Your engagement keeps these legends alive in the halls of gods and gladiators. Like this video if you believe that even in the darkest chaos, order will find a way. Subscribe and take your place among the ranks of legends. Until next time, keep exploring the shadows, for that is where the true gods hide.